Hi, Peter. Thanks for joining us. Uh, I'm really grateful for having you take this time with me and talk about something that we're both really passionate about, which is Oneness Academy. It's really important to us to educate our kids appropriately so that uh, they don't grow up to have traumas, and they're able to flow naturally. And I'd like to just kind of get started with you on why you're passionate about education toward kids, your role as a father, a little backstory.
Absolutely. I mean, you and I both have discussed many times, even all the men in our group have discussed what's one of our biggest primary reason and purpose and impact we can make in this world. As many people consider and think, that a lot of people want to change the world, and for me, it all stems with the biggest impact you can have is in this next generation. The biggest legacy you can leave beyond your life is of your kids or this next generation impact you can make, because that will continue that legacy. And I think in our spiritual journey and our actual journey in life, I know for me, I spent most of my 20s and into my 30s now, exactly as what you're saying, learning from or healing from the trauma or overcoming the fear or the programming that was built in at an early age, right? And so, being a father, and fortunately myself, I was more awakened prior to having my first son, Ethan. I think it's important for myself and my wife to try to provide a life for them, an opportunity for them, with as little, those resistances, the fears, the built-in programming that we had to unlearn and overcome, and it'll just be so much a better jumpstart for them as an adult. And so for us, everything, our methodologies and everything that we teach, it's based off of certain principles to us that we feel very strongly about, that would also allow our kids and the children to thrive.
Yeah, I love that. I think a big influence, Jade was mentioning your wife when she was on with me. She was mentioning where it stemmed from her was with the birth of your son, Ethan. And could you tell us how that was for you?
Yeah, I mean, that changed my life. I've always, loved kids. Growing up, I was actually a youth pastor, so I dealt a lot with actually, youth, and that's been a passion of mine at an early age. But having your own kid, and both the challenges and the absolute joy of it, it not only inspired me to put more attention on the family and building a strong foundation. But for me, it motivated me more to provide those opportunities for the family. And he was just such a huge blessing, and it also at the same time, helped me understand, because every kid that we have, even I have two kids now, they're so polar, almost opposite, but helping understand, it's not all nurture, it's also nature as well, and being able to allow them to be who they are, authentically them, is a key point and learning experience for myself.
Can you tell me some of the roles or some of the problems you've had or obstacles with raising those two opposites, as far as like integrating discipline and...
Yeah, I mean, for me, I live by a few very simple principles, and the way I live my life is of two sides of the same coin, and I know my wife Jade has the same viewpoint. Is there's one side of just unconditional love, and a parent to a child love is some of the greatest, especially a mother's love to their kids. I mean, and I'm trying to get there as a father as well. but that side of the equation of just the love and the unconditional love you can provide, it builds such a strong foundation in their own security, in their own confidence, in their own, ability to go in this world, and to thrive. That's one side. But the same side of the coin, which a lot of people don't consider it, is tough love. And to me, tough love is those things that, we're here to guide them. Our kids chose us to be their parents, and, for this, several years of their lives, critical years in their lives, parents have the biggest influence on a kid. I would say the biggest impact on a kid than in their entire life, typically. And most of the programming, all those things, but the guidance one of the main things, part of discipline is just for protection, right? As a father, as a parent, we need to protect them from the harms, and real danger, not this false sense of danger that we would do. And then to, discipline them just so, for morality. I would always say, there's a big difference of just enforcing authority as a parent, which is something that we're trying not to practice. And there's a utility for authority, but most of it's being misused as a parent. And so instead of enforcing authority, we want to teach morality. And to me, I've seen a lot of people, very, very bright people in life, where, there's a great book called The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose. And they talk about this thought process. The most dangerous superstition is authority. And he says, teaching morality, he said, is such a better way to do it, because let's just say if you had a kid and he grew up just this brilliant kid, right? However, because that brilliant kid walks a fine line between whether he does something, even that unknowingly for on the dark side, or something that he doesn't want to do, only because he trusted authority. How often do bright people or brilliant people go in and say, hey, well, you told me that this was for this reason, and all of a sudden, it wasn't. It's like, one of Einstein's, only regrets is that he helped with the H-bomb. Why was that? This bright guy, because he trusted authority, all of a sudden he was part of that group. And so the same difference. But if you teach them morality and help them discern between right and wrong, what their sense of the moral compass of right and wrong, they can see past that. And to me, instilling that at an early age, instead of just blindly trusting everything I say, right? Because then they're going to blindly do that same thing to their teachers, and trust. And we know the school system isn't all pure, and isn't all true either, right? So for them to think for themselves, and then society trusts the pastors and priests and religious leaders on spirituality, and then you go in as an adult and trust the government. I'm not saying not to do any of those things, but to think for yourself, and that's an important piece of defining what your own moral compass is. And for me, that's an important piece, instead of inflicting authority and at an early age, to teach morality.
And that's really different, right? Because the idea to empower them to make their own authority for themselves, it's really different, because I think our parents, they came from more, being persecuted type of upbringing, so it's more fear-based why they're doing it. So it's a confusion between love and fear, right? That exactly. we're unable to see because of our traumas.
That's exactly right.
And so our parents have brought us up this way, obviously not because of malintent, but because they just didn't know any better.
Exactly.
And so, shedding light on this is really special to me, and the way you describe how, it's unconditional love and it's tough love, and these things are aspects of yourself that you've shown to me, in abundance. The way you treat your family, the way you treat your friends. I remember when it first really dawned on me that I really wanted to focus a lot of my time into finding solutions for education for kids. It was when you took the time to bring us out to a Joshua Tree, to a man's trip, and you just kind of walked us through, a ceremonial man's way of looking at things, and you asked us questions, what is a real man, and I remember what I thought at the time. I remember thinking like a real man, a good father, a good man is someone who gets bad news from their kids and doesn't trip, is like, he understands. He's more, if his daughter comes and tells him that he's pregnant or something as a teenager, he's understanding, he's loving, he's forgiving, he's able to put himself in that position, rather than be upset about it and build that lack of trust between, in that relationship moving forward, because obviously moving forward she's not going to feel comfortable coming to the father, and it's just like, it's there right in front of us, but we don't piece it together because we're blocked, we're traumatized.
Exactly. I mean, we all grew up, as a son, right, or a daughter, and I can tell you right now, like, even my relationship with my mother, I have this on film, but like, my mother, absolutely did not want me to play sports, even though that was one of my passions that I loved doing, and because she was, and I don't blame her, like, I'm not, because, we grew up lower middle class, and she was afraid, that I would break a bone and we'd go to the hospital, and then all the hospital bills and all that stuff. So it was a risky proposition every time I went on the court, right? And fortunately, I never broke a bone growing up, but I've had injuries, and I remember like every time I would have an injury, right? Like, I would just hide it from my mom. Like, that was literally what I did. I mean, I have this cut right here. Even injuries non-sports related, I was just like, I was trained to just hide that from my mom because I was afraid to get yelled at because of how she responded. And sometimes I just didn't want to hear a mouthful. I remember I was swimming, I got this like permanent thing. It was gushing, I was like maybe in grade school, right? Gushing. And I remember like, we were literally coming up for dinner, and it was dinner, and then I literally talked to her on this side so she wanted to see it the whole entire night, right? And so it can heal. And those are the things I was like, being now on the other side and watching some of my other friends and their relationship with their parents, how they tell their parents everything, right? And I realized it's how I react when something happens. They'll remember that. You see what I'm saying? And I remember even like going to college, and my mom expected me to call her every single weekend, right? And the moment I would forget, I was busy, all that stuff, she would just have like yell at me and lecture me like the first thing. And I remember just like, it didn't even make me want to call her because I was just like, I knew I was getting lectured. So I would skip a week or two, and knowing that, you see what I'm saying? And I was just like, you're instilling like, hey, when you do this, you're gonna do this. And naturally people don't want to have that, especially if you're already in a stressful environment or whatever. You don't want to deal with that today. So instead, I've learned to even change that methodology even with her, and hopefully she's changed along the way, and our relationship is so different. You know what I mean? So, but knowing that, I was just like, how we react to those things that our kids will remember. And I'd much rather as a parent, them tell me the truth so I can be there to help and support them, versus them hide it from me, and then they're gonna have to figure it out on their own.
Yeah. And you've trained them obviously to it's always going to be help and support.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to, our parents, they want to connect with us, but there's just a misunderstanding, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
they don't know how to connect.
Exactly.
And we're like, we don't want to connect
Exactly.
because we're not going to get each other,
Exactly.
So we just, it's like we want to be there for each other. It's obvious the love is there, but there's a miscommunication, a misunderstanding.
That's
and
right.
What I like about what we're doing is we're addressing it.
Yeah.
We're addressing it right, to ourselves. We address it to, when there's something wrong, we address it.
I know. I mean, I've seen my wife apologize to our 3-year-old, 4-year-old daughter at the time, and like literally when she was wrong, and like that's so rare, in at least in our culture, to do that, and like for when she actually made a mistake or said, and my daughter's so great. I mean, like there was this great moment. I don't know if Jade shared this, but like, you know, Lotus, she felt this way, the way, and she literally was in bed with us, and she was like, "Mommy," she's like, "I didn't like the way you said that," you know, and it was literally held, and the fact that, you know, she even brought that up, she could bring that up, and the way, you know, Jade, how she responded to that, allowed her, enabled her, like, "Thank you for telling me this," like appreciating that, like that's the thing that we as parents can do. Appreciate when they do that. Praise them instead of immediately saying, "You're gonna, how dare you," like how typical a lot of parents do it, right? Because then they're like, okay, and kids are much brighter than we think we give them credit for. And so encouraging them that, and then being there, support them, like, okay, why, I'm gonna do that every time. Like when I'm hurt, look at, they help me. When I feel this way, they allow me, and they'll change. Like all those things, you're empowering them that their voice is important, that they are important, you know, and you can teach, you know, and it requires a little more patience in the way you communicate. And that's where I think most parents lack, is like most of our, what we call discipline, most of the reasons, you know, why we're forcing the programming happens out of, to be honest with you, and I'm calling out most parents, and this one might hurt, but I realized this, I read this in a book, and I was just like, this one rings so true to me, was most of the things that we do is out of our own convenience more than anything else. It's like when our kids are drawing on the wall or banging on the drums, they're just expressing their creativity. But we say, "How dare you, no, bad boy," whatever, all that stuff, right? When all they're just doing is expressing creativity, because we are the one who has to clean that up, and we don't, and that's inconvenient to us, right? Are they really doing anything wrong by expressing their creativity, right? Like a very simple, generic kind of rule of thumb on the morality side is this, is, you know, do not trespass. That's like one of the basic laws of the universe. So like, are they trespassing? Yeah, if they're drawing on the neighbors, like spray painting neighbors, they're trespassing. Yeah, that's different. But if it's their own things and they're using their own creative expression, right? It's usually because of our inconvenience as a parent, is we're shutting that down. And so I'm very cognizant the difference of, are they trespassing? You know, now, you know, and you can trespass by heading, you know, it's other people, your own property, you can't touch, you know, physically, but all those things kind of based off that simple foundation of do not trespass. Because once you abide that law, most of the other things just some self-expression usually.
So these philosophies that we're putting into practice, you seem to have to gravitate toward them naturally. Is that something I've noticed from you? Is like, can you tell us like why it is that you naturally gravitate to this way of thinking?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily natural. I think what is natural to me is what I call first principles, right? I've been built to try and find the core first principle, leading principle that I can simplify my life. And so like for instance, it's morality, not authority. It's identifying, protecting from danger, not instilling fear, right? It's like, you know, like I said, in the morality side, it's like talking about do not trespass. So these are core principles that simplifies my life, instead of saying, now here's the 30 rules in the house, right? Because then they can't remember, I can't remember, and then like you start to contradict yourself. And so for me, I always, instead of that 30 rules, I'll take the time to say, what's the commonality of into 1 or 2 or 3, right? And to simplify my life, right? But it's the core foundation of all the same thing that we want. So what I try to do is find those core principles in everything I do in life and business and anything I do, even like we're training for a triathlon, like that's the same thing. Like I'm trying to find the core things in nutrition and training, all those things. And that's where, and my life is just so much simpler, and I stick to that. Yeah. And then sometimes it's like there's a better principle that comes along the way that I learn, and then that replaces the other one, and to be able to adapt along the way. And so to me, that's what I, you know, have successfully done, and I'll always do that with pretty much in anything I want to do, and that's been a large part of any of my success in life.
Absolutely, that is something I've really learned from you. you do teach it to me by telling me, but you also put the examples. You really simplify things.
Yeah.
You really make things simple. There are only a couple of things to really focus on,
Exactly.
and it's really simple. And it's like I really learned from you like the difference between easy and simple.
Yeah.
Like there was a time when I thought things should be easy, and I wanted things to flow easily, but I didn't understand or respect the role of resistance.
Yeah.
And so, but it didn't have anything to do with how simple it is, because it is just, just do these two things every day for a long period of time, and you're gonna get the thing that you're chasing.
Exactly.
And you really hone that into me, because you say it and you do it, and that's obviously a great way to teach as a father.
Yeah.
Because our kids, they learn from seeing what we do, not what we say.
Exactly.
Another thing I wanted to touch on is like the Oneness Academy that we have going on at your house. It's ran and operated by your wife Jade, and she mentioned last time with me that it's past few weeks or a couple months already where you're implementing one day Fridays where it's all the fathers of the kids. Monday through Thursday, it's the mothers, playing the role of the teacher and the mother as usual. And Fridays, it's a new thing where the fathers come in and they start playing the role. I stopped in on you guys last week. You guys were doing a real cool science experiment. Can you tell me like what you want out of this, what you've been getting out of this, how this came to be, where you decided like, hey, this is something I really want to do?
So it's, for me, for about a year or so, I've been wanting to implement a 4-day work week. I've talked to all my HR companies, and at one point, we had like 900 employees. I was just like, and the logistical aspects of trying to, and have different types of businesses, but I was like so adamant about trying to move to a 4-day work week, and so where we work 10 hours a day instead of the 8 hours, and then, get the 40 hours in the 4 days. And mainly because I would call that one day off, the extra day off, I would call that an epic day, right? And I would even wanted to brand it Epic Day, and I own the domains and all that stuff, right? And I even created this whole video and all that stuff. It wasn't as easy to try to implement it just from a logistical standpoint. But then, with this whole COVID, I was just like, things were slowing down, and I had more leisure time to, or more ability to just say, because we're working from home, and it was a lot more fluid, right? So, I woke up, and this is about now going on 5 weeks ago, when it was on a Monday, and I woke up and I just said, I'm going to do a 4-day work week moving forward. And I just made that decision that Monday. And part of that epic day, that Friday, for me, what that epic day looks like, and I think everyone's, the extra day off would look different. But for me, what I always wanted was to allow Jade to take that day off. Like when I take that day off, I wanted to watch the kids at that time. We didn't have Oneness Academy at the time, but I wanted to take over responsibility as a father. So Jade, who's doing this 7 days a week nonstop, right? As a mother, and she's done it now for, almost 7 years, right? To actually have that would be her me day. Like literally, she knows in her mind she's off from the kids, and she can entrust me to handle it. So the only difference now is when I implement it, we have this beautiful Oneness Academy, and the mothers are just doing such a remarkable job. I was like, okay. And I didn't even tell any of the fathers, you should do this. Like I did not even try to campaign for any of this. I just said, I'm gonna do it. And I didn't even really announce it. I just kind of quietly said, and I was relieved Jade from her duties. The mothers were still kind of doing it the first week because the other fathers weren't doing it. But I just
went home and told them.
No, exactly. That's exactly what happened. But then for instance, Sunny heard that I was off that week because Jade told Maggie, and then Sunny's like, hey, I want to hang out with you, and then I'll take that day off. So that first week it was just Sunny and I, and the other mothers, and then the next week we added John, right? Because he heard, he was like a little FOMO, he's like, I'll do it, right? And then the next week VJ went, and the next week Derek did. And so literally we had all 5 fathers just by, and I never once told them individually, hey, you should do this. We just did it.
Yeah.
And the mother saw it. And, and I remember that first week, my intent, I even told this, I was like, I hope the fathers can join me, but, it's their own free will, right? And I love it for the opportunity for the mothers to take the day off because they deserve it. There'll be so much, the relationship even will be so much, because they're going to be so much lighter that have that one day to themselves. Like the relationship as a mother, as a spouse, as a person, they're going to be able to know that, not just a one-time thing, because we'll do that on the weekends randomly, whatever, but just knowing that day is sacred to them, their immediate, and they can do whatever they want. And they're still trying to, like, there's so much now more free time. They're still trying to come to the house, but they're knowing that they're like cooking together, they're shopping together. Sometimes they do things on their own, but it's a great day for them. And I've already seen this lightness, and I'm sure they're going to work even harder those other 4 days, And there's a little competitive, like, because. So then I was like, I want to brand it, because I was like, the dads aren't, maybe as cool as the moms, the moms, and so I was just like, so I branded it Fathers or Fun Day Fridays, because I wanted the kids, to be, excited about, and Fun Day Fridays, we were learning or we're playing, but we're learning and playing, but, it was more hands-on. So we don't do any schoolwork that Friday, and we are all hands-on play and experiments and crafts and, we're doing field trips once a month, and so all these other things, and now we have it where each dad is now using their special gifts, and like, BJ's, he's a science guy, so like he's now, and I'm challenging each dad to say, hey, you're not only doing it for your own kids, you have 11 kids now, and up your game, like use your own creativity. Like the moms do every day, and so it's just like, so it's and they're just finding so much. At first, like as a dad, like I'm just doing it because, but now they're just finding so much joy in it. Like that's sometimes their highlight of their week is like the seeing that joy in their faces pop up, all that stuff. So, it's been hugely rewarding, I would say, for the fathers, and it's just begun. We're on our second month, but. This is something, and we were talking about, it's the summer, right? So we're like, should we just have the summer break? And we were like, we just have so much, and the moms were saying, we just have so much great momentum. Let's just continue this, and so it's been, extremely, extremely rewarding. And, I would challenge anyone else if they have any ideas or whatever, like, or want to glean in on as far as what, our format, I'd love to help out.
What would you recommend for somebody who sees this and they want to start implementing something, especially with like COVID and questionable things with our schools? How would someone start something like this? Even they're not as knowledgeable or as wise as you to put everything together. Yeah, so I mean, the format's actually pretty easy, and everyone just do your own. But this is our format, like, and it's probably going to adapt over the months, but I think structure and program is important, because at least there's these kids, that's why schools trying to create is like, they'll realize, okay, this is how we do it. So we usually start with like a little fun, like physical dance activity, just kind of icebreaker. And so we have a little dance thing that we YouTube, and a little kid dance things, there's just to get, and then we'll usually have a craft. And so, my simple things that, I'm not creative enough to come up with a brand new craft every week. So, I mean, the resources are all there, whether you look online, YouTube, sometimes we're buying books, and so you have a list of hundreds of these things, and you just find the ones that, one, maybe fits within your budget, if you have a budget restraint, or two, that that best applies for your kids, right? And whether, we do it, we're fortunate enough to do it in a group setting, right? But, even if your own kids, you do this every Friday, and then maybe adapt it with some other families down the road. It's much easier, I would say, much more fun, for the kids to kind of do it together, the bigger the group you have, right? And so we'll do a craft usually, and then maybe some indoor activities, or outdoor, maybe a story time. So I've been buying these books as well for story time, or we make up our own one.
we've done, part of the story time, we actually make up a story, go around, and we actually, we say the first sentence and the kid use their own creativity and say another sentence and all this stuff. We're definitely practicing the kids public speaking. So very often, at least every other week, the kids are doing something, presenting something. Like we did Father's Day card, and they were presenting one thing that they love about their dad. Or we had a awesome drama skit last week, right? We had a whole drama. We did the Three Little Pigs. They had to memorize their lines, and it was boys versus girls, and there's a little competitive side, and it was this awesome thing, right? And they memorized their lines, and some of them didn't, but it's just getting them comfortable to be able to express themselves. The mothers did this awesome puppet show the other day, so it's just like, being able to play in those things. We'll have a lunch break, in between, give them a little breaks, and then we'll go back to more activities, science stuff. So we'll usually have like some, very cool chemistry or science. We build like a hydraulic thing, from this kit, So sometimes I'll buy these monthly subscription for these kits to do that. VJ has this cool science book, of all these great ideas. Mm-hmm. And I just bought this other book for outdoor activities. And so all those things, you don't have to come up with it all your own. It's all there. We live in a society where everything is there. It's referenced. It's just taking the time to go through the ones that that can work. And there's been some games that have been completely failed, and like it was like, they flopped, and then we're like, we're not to use that one. And then glean on the other ones that do work, right? And that's just trial and error, just like with anything in life. But and just having that format. Sometimes we'll do like a movie afternoon, and we're gonna try to do more field trips now. We built a garden over at Mark's place, and so this Friday at 3:00 we're actually doing a field trip to the garden, because we built it from a small little seed, and now I don't know, 8 weeks later, like that one small seed, now corn like this big, ready to harvest. And so we're gonna allow them. Most of the kids already planted the seeds, and now they're gonna see the fruits of their labor, which is really cool this Friday. So again, challenging the dads to be way more creative, for the kids, because this is your kid. These are stuff that your kids most of them will remember for the rest of their lives, and this experience, and the joy that you get and the reward you get is priceless.
Yeah. So from what I gather, what you're saying is you have to be very involved in this progress. You can't just like set it and forget it. Right. It's like so something I really appreciate from my end is I don't have kids yet, but so I'm kind of like learning from exactly. people who are doing it right, because I've been seeing it done wrong for so long. Exactly. I grew up not wanting kids, and it's only been recent that I'm like, hey, wait a minute, it could be pretty cool to have kids. Exactly.
Especially the environment we created, for them, because like the program is all there. The kids, and then the bonding the kids have with one another. It's just seeing that the opportunity that they have to grow, and the lessons they're learning, and the amount of fun they're having is so key. And I think one of the newer lessons that I think we're all learning is this idea of play. As adults, like kids are the most spiritual people on the planet, because they came here to play, and then we, as boring adults, like try to like undo that, right? And take life a little too seriously. And so I think incorporating play, even as adults, like I get a chance to play with my kids now. It's not like a teacher, like I'm playing, and we're challenging the dad to play with them. Like one thing that Carolyn learned and taught me was we need to enter into their world. That's a very key thing. We need to, if we're going to be effective, we need to enter into their world, not them come up to us, right? Not take it so seriously.
I love it, brother. I think this is a great place to stop. I couldn't be more grateful for the work that you're doing. I'm a big fan. When the world finds out what you've done, they're going to be super grateful too. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.